This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going over UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Borralho / The Ultimate Fighter finale. I'll give you my thoughts and predictions on this entire card. Probably going to be a very quick card breakdown because there's not really too much to talk about. Because when you're looking at, like, for example, the first fight of the night, and I'll get to it, the UFC kind of knows what they're doing, and they're trying to set a certain current for the UFC, and they're trying to get certain people out to make more money to then hire new Contender Series alum. But I'll give you my thoughts on how many bouts are in this card here. 10 bouts, which is good. It's a good bout card. And I'm considering even doing like a live fight companion, mainly because when discussing UFC 305, which I'll get to right now, my thoughts on it, my reaction to the main event, it needed to be captured in video, and I've not shrieked like a young lady like that in many a years, just based on like everything that was going on in that night and how the fight was going, and then how this fight ended. It was spectacular. It was a good night, just fight wise. It capped off a very weird night. I'm gonna go off on a ton of fighters here, but the main event to me saved this card because there was some weird stuff going on, and what I like to call the Aussie brain card, because the first fight of the night here, we've got Jesus Aguilar fighting Stuart Nickel. Now, I specifically said, Stuart Nickel, this is the best fighter he's ever fought, period. And Aguilar's a little pit bull. I picked Nickel because I'm thinking, he has a very clear path to victory here. Just don't be stupid, dude. Don't do anything that you wouldn't normally do. And he got a little cocky. He took Aguilar down really easily, and the way he did it, well, I was impressed by it. Right, I kind of like an arm drag. I don't really recall exactly what he did, but I remember being impressed. He held Aguilar down for a bit, and then Aguilar got back up, and he started threatening the guillotine. And Nickel didn't address it. For a black belt like of that caliber, that was very much so a very boneheaded decision for him not to address it. To the point when Aguilar had the choke in, he was saying, "Hey, he's out." I didn't believe him. And then when he was convulsing on the ground, I was like, okay, maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe these Mexicans aren't all lying rat bastards. But yeah, it was an interesting little fight there. Aguilar keeps proving that he is not to be underestimated. And Nickel, I think he'll be back. I think he has the skills. He just needs to, you know, broaden his IQ. And now that he's fought legitimate competition, I would like to see him fight, like the Malcolm Gordons of the world. I don't even know if he's still in the UFC. I doubt it, but, give him somebody like a little step up in competition, but not too much. Aguilar, you don't want to be facing a mad dog Mexican in your first UFC debut bout. It's just a tough one for him, so I'll give him some slack there. Kenan Song gets dropped by Ricky Glenn early on. I was pissed. I had Song in a parlay with somebody else, and, after that initial bout, a bout of like adversity, Song took over. He was beating the crap out of Ricky Glenn. Both men looked terrible, particularly Glenn. He looked as if he was just a absolute shell of the shell that was formerly Ricky Glenn. And Song, he couldn't really hit him that hard. He was hitting him hard, don't get me wrong, but not hard enough to put him out. And, the crowd was already not having it. Their boy just got choked unconscious, and Song Kenan couldn't finish the deal here. So what's the deal there? So moving on, Tom Nolan versus Alex Reyes. What we have in common when it comes to people who bet Alex Reyes, aka me, and people who bet Tom Nolan, is that we both lost money. But at least I lost money knowing I was probably going to lose money, because I would assume you didn't take the odds of the minus whatever. You took him by knockout. And oh man, Twitter was going off on Tom Nolan, even though he was winning and he was looking improved. He was doing some dumb stuff that Alex just was not wise enough to capitalize. He would rush in like I expected him to. Reyes would counter shot him, but he just was too worried about what was coming back, and he tried for those takedowns. Nolan just couldn't finish him. He wasn't his aggressive self that he needed to be, which, props to him. It wasn't about finishing Reyes. It was about him not putting himself in any stupid danger, which is a maturity lesson that we needed to see from him. But, a lot of people lost money, and I would understand why being upset at him, but I don't think he was worth even touching at all. Like, maybe by decision, if you felt the inclination that he probably wasn't going to finish Reyes, a somewhat veteran. But yeah, we probably all lost money, and ha ha ha, here we are. Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns. Now, I picked Jenkins. I bet Burns just for the like, hey, screw it. I'll take him by like submission in period. It was like maybe plus 700. And again, I didn't expect him to get it because I also took Jack Jenkins as a hedge by TKO, which he ended up getting that, which was fine. Just the fact that Jenkins would, and this happened on a couple of occasions. He got taken down twice, which is already that's a really bad sign, dude. Like, how are you letting Herbert Burns, the poster child for, hey, are your T levels low in Brazil? You letting this dude take you down and control you. And yeah, he got back up. You kicked the shit out of his legs. And then when he fell to the ground, instead of disengaging, knowing that he was hurt, you would just kick his legs. Like, dude, don't do that. And had that continued to happen, you're letting him survive. And if, say, Herbert just recovers a bit of that cardio on the ground, he can come back up, maybe get another takedown, and eke out a very slimy decision. But luckily, Jack, really luckily, he ended up getting the TKO, and he didn't have to worry about that, unlike another one of his countrymen. But yeah, Casey O'Neill defeats Luana Santos. I tried staying away from this one for the very reason that we saw Luana Santos. She had the momentum going her way, and Casey O'Neill, she's never looked good. I was never impressed by either girl. The only thing I was fairly, props to these ladies is the power for Luana Santos. It's developing. Like, she's trying to get better at her striking, and I can appreciate that. Her judo's not too bad. And Casey O'Neill, she's really sloppy. She doesn't have a lot of power, but I do like her dog mentality. Moving forward, trying. That's really what she does best. She tries really hard. And that sounds bad, but, in this particular fight, she looked more improved. She looked the much better striker. And I don't think it's like a warning sign to say, hey, let's keep an eye on Casey if they give her a step up in competition, because they are around the same level, skill wise. I think Santos with a couple of adjustments could have won this fight, but Casey O'Neill was just more seasoned. She was just stronger, and she was just more prepared here. And props to her. But overall, I don't think either girl deserves any much more hype. But I do think the higher ceiling will be on Luana Santos if she starts developing a better game plan. Like, send this girl down to the Fighting Nerds and let's see what they can do with her. Next bout, Ricardo Ramos defeats Josh Coolabout. I did not agree with that decision, but I don't disagree with it at the same time. Ramos, oh my God. So Josh had this dude dead to rights multiple times. He kicks his legs, brutalizes him in the first round. Makes a mistake, gives up his back, which I was like, oh, here we go. Survives. I mean, nasty chokes. Dead to rights, rear naked chokes. He survives. Ricardo Ramos' leg is busted. And I remember thinking, this is the perfect spot to live bet Josh. Yet, despite nearly getting finished in the first round, where maybe even a bad judge could have given this a 10-8, they still had Josh like minus 300. I was like, what's going on here? And fascinating. Round number 2, he's dominating. He wins round number 2. Round number 3, well, back to round number 2, actually. He has him hurt, kicks his leg, and the Aussie brain showed up again. He kicks his legs from while he's on the ground just begging for mercy, like, hey, just let him back up. And I'm thinking, this guy is showing to have like some of the worst fight IQ today. And it's not something I've ever really seen from Josh. It was disheartening to see. I actually put a live bet on him. I think at a certain point, no, I didn't live bet him, my bad. I took him beforehand, before he ballooned up. I took him like at minus 150, thinking he was going to win the fight easily. He survives. I was like, okay, let's look at the odds again to bet him. Not worth it. I even said betting Ramos wasn't even that worth it because his leg was compromised. And even then in the third round, he's letting Ramos kind of have a better round. He's allowing this to happen. Then he gets taken down. And it's hard really for idiotic judges this night to not differentiate between who's winning a round. Maybe some top control will do it. He didn't do any damage with it. I'm not upset at the decision. I was just more upset at Josh Coolabout's lack of initiative here. He just, he even taunted him at one point, did a little spin. I was like, bro, you're a lost cause at this point. Vulture Walker defeats Junior Tafa. I did bet Vulture. I put a unit on him. At plus 100, he cashed somewhat easily. There was a little bit of adversity. He looked a little lost getting hit. He took down Junior, and then that whole fiasco. Now, I don't want to get too much into it, but that is 100% a legitimate stoppage. It's happened before. I've talked about it with some of the people that I've done my judging certification with. Specifically, do not yell in agonizing pain, and they will not stop the fight. You can make sounds like ooh, ooh, but don't fucking yell like my knee, like, dude. And then Tafa got all butthurt. That kind of stuff is not good if you want to stay in the UFC. So you're what, 1-3? It was just a bad look for Walter Walker. I wasn't too impressed. I was still very worried up until he got that submission, and I was very surprised that he ended up getting it. It didn't even look that tight. It's just more so Junior's incredibly not well versed on the ground yet. I know, again, he was stuffing takedowns. I know he was doing all that. The get up game, when you get that giant monster on you, that clean monster on you, it is what it is. But yeah, props to Walter Walker cashing me out. Carlos Prates, he utterly destroyed Jing Liang. That was hard to watch. I was questioning Carlos a bit just because, he can start a little slow. The boxing of Jing Liang is very good. And Jing Liang's kind of known to catch you off guard, but Prates had none of that. He was super measured, and he found the nasty knockout. He didn't go for the TKO. He had Jing Liang wobbled and rocked all over the place, but he didn't rush anything. Then when he decided to put an end to the night, he put an end to the night. 100%. He deserved like a $100,000 bonus. That was ridiculous from Prates. He called out Chaos Williams, and I was telling people, like, yo, Chaos should not respond to him. Chaos responds to him. I'm thinking, dude, you should have faked your death. You should have been like, hey, I COVID got me or something. Because Prates at this point, he is looking like the real deal. And I kept saying it, like a guy that gets veneers in the middle of his UFC career as he's budding and he's starting like to get popular, getting more and more difficult opponents. That shows a level of confidence, my friends, that I have not seen before. All right, next bout. I picked Tai Tuivasa mainly because I thought he was going to show some fight. Ultimately, and if I'm being honest, right, I'm going to be 100% blunt. Heard about this fight, Rosenstrike, 100%. But I get in my own head sometimes. I'm like, maybe if he goes out there and he pushes the pace, Jairzinho, I know he can just kind of calm things down and slow things down. He should be able to win this by decision. But if Tai makes it a dogfight, we can see some fireworks here. Tai 100% showed that he's got both feet out the door. He didn't try. I will talk about the decision, but I ended up betting Rosenstrike by decision. It was plus 1,000. And as I'm seeing this, I'm like, yo, I might have taken the L with the pick, but I'm going to make some bank at this plus 1,000. And I'm looking at the fight. I'm like, okay, there's no way they're going to give this to Tai. Maybe round number 1, maybe. When I heard those 30-27s for Tai Tuivasa, I just was fucking pissed, man. I was so disappointed because in PFL, I had live bet Danny Sabatello to win against, I forget the dude's name, that Cuban wrestler. And I was so certain with that point deduction, if you watch the PFL, that he was going to win that at least 29-28. But there's a slight chance that it could be a draw. They screwed me out of that one because I max bet him live thinking he was going to win that fight. And you could say that I got lucky, but it just was like, oh man, I got screwed by the judges there. And then come back here because I bet unanimous decision, which it was, 100% was unanimous for Rosenstrike. The bet didn't cash. So I felt so violated. I would have had a much better overall night. I would have had some profit. I ended up with no profit because of one guy. Essentially, like, I lost some money, then I gained it back at the end. It just sucked. Yeah, that Tai Tuivasa card was absolutely abysmal. That really was, recent memory, the worst scorecard I've ever seen because he won 0 rounds in my eyes. But yeah, Rosenstrike, ultimately I was right initially, but I should not have second guessed myself. Next bout, split decision win for Dan Hooker. Now here's another interesting tidbit. I don't agree with the scorecards, but I don't disagree with the outcome because it was a very, very close fight. It was like 51-49. Who are you going to give it to based off of what you valued more? If this was Pride, Dan Hooker wins this fight every single time based off of the amount of damage that he did after the initial first round. But when you look at the scorecards, I think everybody gave Gamrot round number 2. And the winning rounds for Hooker, if I can recall correctly, which I will actually look up now, were round number 1 and round number 3. Gamrot versus... I want to see it just to make sure if I'm correct, because I'll tell you what I see as a possible robbery. Yeah, so Hooker round number 1 and 2, or round number 1 and round number 3. Ben Cartledge, Mark Christie, both gave it to Hooker round number 1, round number 3. I would have given round number 2 to Hooker and round number 3, but not round number 1, mainly based off of damage. And this is where I get so pissed at the community when it comes to damage and how it's scored, because round number 1, all the damage was really done by Gamrot. There was only one man that was bleeding out of both eyes, and that was Hooker, and that was caused by Gamrot. He actually even dropped Hooker in the first round. But yes, Hooker did come back. He did hurt Gamrot. Some people would count that as a knockdown. It didn't actually get counted, but he wasn't really in any true danger of getting finished. But the lasting moment was, hey, Gamrot got hurt, and he was on the defensive. But the damage was mostly done by Gamrot early, so that was kind of a split round. But looking at their faces, it's really hard for me not to give it to Gamrot. Again, round number 2 is a little bit closer. I thought Hooker was doing really good work with that guillotine attempt, and then the elbows against the cage while Gamrot was going for the takedown. So again, I don't disagree with Hooker winning. It's just the way that he won, scorecard-wise, was a little suspicious to me. So I still think Gamrot would have won, but based off of the funky scoring, ultimately I still would have given 29-28 Hooker based off the last 2 rounds. So I'm not upset about it. I did have a decent enough read not to bet Gamrot, because I thought it was going to be one of these kind of slippery little fights where one little moment could cause Hooker to get the upper hand. So, fun fight. If you had a Hooker bet, props on you. Kai Kara-France defeats Steve Erceg. I bet Steve Erceg on that parlay with Song. I felt he would be the easiest guy to win. I thought he was going to perform well against Kai Kara-France. I also had 2 units on him, which I ended up losing, of course. So a total of like 3 units lost on Steve Erceg. But, I gained the 1 back, so I'm down 2. Yeah, Kai Kara, the way to beat him, push him back. Steve Erceg was doing so. Measured, very measured, not throwing a whole ton. All he had to do was watch out for that same leaping left-right combination, and ultimately didn't keep his hands up. He got caught. Funny enough, I was watching and my my TV goes black. So I have to reset everything, refresh stuff, and then I see Erceg on the ground going for the single, and then he gets stopped. I was like, man, that sucks. But yeah, Kai Kara, the funniest thing about it is that, yes, he beat Steve Erceg. I still think Steve Erceg is very good. He just happened to get caught here. If they give Kai Kara-France a title shot, oh man, I'm going to have to max bet Pantoja, because Kai Kara's, to me, very basic, and all you got to do is watch out for those leaping combinations. He's a good striker, don't get me wrong, but it's only if he's going forward. If you're pushing him back and he's very defensive, that's all he really has, is that leaping. It is what it is, though. Props to Kai Kara for finishing Steve, and then Dricus du Plessis defeating Israel Adesanya. I had du Plessis. I bet him at the, I think, plus 110, and I also bet everything I had in my Bovada account, which was for the doesn't go the distance, which to me was surprising, because it was like maybe minus 132. It was an odd number. So I'm looking at that as like a recovery bet, and the fight's going on, and I'm impressed by both men. Dricus is definitely strong. Adesanya's looking very good. Very fun fight. And you start seeing Dricus slow down, getting hit to the body. And at this point, I'm like, I don't give a shit who wins. Just somebody finish one another. I don't care. I'm starting to root against Dricus. Like, yo, my money's more important than you winning this belt. Because no matter what, I need to win. But if Dricus wins by finish, then that's the ultimate thing for me. Dricus is looking kind of a little sloppy. He's not able to get to Adesanya. Then the moment happens, he hurts him with his goofiness, man. I keep saying it, like, there's no need to watch tape on Dricus, because he's going to win LOL always, no matter what. He's going to find a way. If they do match him up with Pereira, man, I don't know what to think about that. Like, if it's at 205, I don't care what weight class. Like it's just the magic from Pereira versus the autistic rainbow of Dricus du Plessis coming to a head. Don't know what to do there. Rather just stay away. Maybe don't even watch it. It might melt my face. But yeah, Drake is getting that submission on Adesanya. It was a bit surprising how quickly Adesanya tapped. Like he had just accepted his fate. Like, well, it is what it is. There's a ton of jokes I would love to say, but I can't because it's YouTube. But it was an interesting visual that we saw. And yeah, I recovered some money and then ended up losing some of it in baseball. But overall, fun night. This fight, very super fun. And yeah, we're getting a nice little screw you card with the Cannonier versus Borralho fight here. So I'll give you my quick thoughts on this, starting with the first fight of the night, Kong Wang versus Victoria Leonardo. I I was super slow on the Kong Wang line, and I got to start paying attention because I saw her in the Road to UFC and instantly thought I'm gonna max bet her versus whoever they give her, and then they give her Victoria Leonardo. I did not know that. I was so behind with other stuff that I did not get a chance to max bet her, and now she's minus 800 versus Leonardo, which she's going to finish Leonardo. Leonardo's just not UFC material. She needs a takedown. She's got an awkward, funky kickboxing, karate type style. It's not very good. She's plus 550 for a reason. Wang looks like a very complete prodigy, even though she's 32 years old. You're going to hear this. She fought Shevchenko. She's fought Yu Wanan. It is what it is. You know, it's just more so at this very moment, I don't even need to talk about what I see from her. She's a very good kickboxer. She's developing a good submission type ground game. She is strong enough to stuff takedowns. Even if Leonardo went and trained with Henry Cejudo for months and learning takedowns, she's just not a physical type of woman to be able to get someone as well-rounded at this very moment. Well-rounded. I don't want to have to say like, oh my God, she's well-rounded versus everyone in the division, but she's more than well-rounded for Victoria Leonardo. Like, even if that is the case, she's not going to be able to hold her down. All she can do is stall, and Wang is just too surgical with everything. And is there a chance she can get a finish? I think she will. You know, I don't necessarily see Wang as like this ultimate knockout artist, but I don't think it takes too much to knock out Leonardo. We saw with that cutie here, Natalia Silva, that you just have to be athletic enough. Man, Silva's a killer. I'm not going to even get started on that. She's an absolute monster. But we saw how she got handled there. She got her face exploded with a spinning heel or a head kick, actually. Yeah, Wang, it should be an easy fight. As long as Wang's not fighting like a moron, she's going to find the knockout. And I think she can comfortably get it in the first 2 rounds. So I think maybe the prop should be by inside the distance because I think she's got some sneaky little chokes as well. So if you're Victoria, doesn't matter. If she tries to go for the takedown, I think Wang is more than comfortable going for guillotine chokes. And she's still very young in her MMA career in general, 5-0. It's more than enough with her kickboxing experience. She beat Shevchenko. That should mean something. Yeah, moving on. We've got a fascinating little bout here. Josiane Nunes versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. We've got minus 190 for Cavalcanti. Comeback on Nunes is plus 160. This is a bantamweight. It had been at 145. A little bit more danger. Nunes, she is a tiny little marauder. She's 5'2", not much of a ground game. She can go for subs. She's just a tough gal, man. She's fun to watch. And Cavalcanti, to me, she's more of a technician. She's a very, very good kickboxer. Moves laterally very well. Throws the low kicks very well. She's just a better, more technical girl. And often I don't like necessarily picking against Josiane Nunes, especially when it's somebody that she can possibly knock out. But how quick and how clean I think Cavalcanti is, I think she's going to win this one by a decision. Being the bigger girl, she should implement a grappling type style. We saw Josiane Nunes lose to one of the worst fighters in the UFC right now in Chelsea Chandler by getting laid on top of. I believe that was she missed weight. It was at 135. She just missed weight, I believe. Let me actually be positive here. I'd rather just waste your time looking this up than actually talking about this fight because it's it was bantamweight. So yeah, I think ultimately Cavalcanti should win this fight. I think 29, 28. I think Nunes, because she's such a marauder, she'll go forward. She will land hard shots, so that could sway the judges into maybe giving her the round. But ultimately, if Nunes is swinging and swinging at air, that's not going to do much other than, fatigue her. I think Cavalcanti is just going to be too surgical on the outside, picking her shots, moving laterally, and she's not really going to get touched here. I think she will be able to clinch up Nunes and do enough damage in the clinch to walk herself into a decision here. I don't see her finishing Nunes. There's always an upside if Nunes gets a finish here. She does hit really hard, but I do see her as like a very sloppy girl. And when she's fighting more technical women who are very good on the feet, like I really appreciate Cavalcante's eyes in the cage and in engagement with her opponents. She sees things very well. She's just very calm in the pocket, and she's just able to float outside and avoid really having too much of a problem getting struck on. And she lands her low kicks very well, and I just don't really have much more to say about it. I just don't see Nunes having too much success when we have a competent striker here. So I'll go with Cavalcanti by a decision, but she could possibly start searching for the knockout. We see Dricus landing on a much better quote-unquote striker. We can see Nunes maybe land a punch here on Cavalcanti, but I think ultimately it should be a 29-28 for Cavalcanti. Moving on, oh dear Lord, we've got Jose Medina versus Zach Reese. Medina, he is plus 300, the only guy in my UFC knowledgeable history in the Contender Series to get his ass beat and still get a contract just because he was like mean mugging. Oh, he's dropping down to middleweight and he's fighting Zach Reese, who is a known finisher. Zach Reese, to me, being minus 400, given his ability to submit you and to knock you out, being that he's the bigger guy, he's 6'4", 77-inch reach. He's just really got to avoid any goofiness from Medina. Medina, he's a bit of a brawler, and I don't know if he's going to have any sort of true technique versus Zach Reese. Zach Reese, he's still unproven. He's been getting quick finishes, and then the only time he ended up losing, he got slammed by Cody Brundage, which I give him a pass for that. He did have a slick armbar triangle transition. It just happened to get slammed on his fucking head. He should handle Medina, and I'm thinking, I don't know if he'll get him by knockout, just because Medina did show some toughness in the Contender Series bout with that fraud, Gadzia Zulov. It's just more so with him being such a well-rounded finisher. I can see him hurting Medina, like really hurting him, and maybe deciding at the very last moment, maybe I'll continue striking instead of going for a choke. But I'll go with the submission. Just given the fact that Medina is a tough dude, I can see him getting choked out. But I see this bout very similar to how, Fernando Padilla. I'll give you that example. Padilla fought some dude who beat the crap out of, I think, Robbie Ring. I forget the guy's name, but he beat the shit out of this kid. And he looked good. And then he fought real competition. And then we saw what real competition can do to guys who look good in the Contender Series, who beat a decent enough prospect. And I kind of see that happening here. It's just a bit of the opposite. We have a tough dude who didn't look all that great, and he's fighting Zach Reese, who's kind of an unproven kind of guy. But I think Zach's ultimately been improving. He went to Bangtao to really work on his striking. He looked a lot more fluid. The way he threw that body kick, and 15 seconds worth of a fight against Kansas City boy, what's his name, Marquez. It's not a lot, but the way he threw that body kick, very impressive. I'm like, okay, they're at least teaching you how to throw quick kicks. So Reese, to me, submission round number 1. All right, next bout, we've got Vyacheslav Slava Claus Borralho versus James Goku Yontop. Plus 205 for Yontop. Come back on Borralho is minus 250. So I was going back and forth on this one because I don't like jumping off of a guy's hype, and I don't even want to use the word hype. It's just the way I've been talking about Borralho. I think he's incredibly talented. I like the way he strikes. Very good kickboxer. He's made me money in the past. He nearly made me money until he went to a draw with Sadikov here, because I do think he's got talent. It's just, man, you getting dropped by that cream-filled twink is really tough for me to swallow. All pun intended there. But dear Lord, he's hard to finish for sure. It's just his chin these days is just so. Can I trust you, my man? Like, I know you're a very accomplished kickboxer. I know you attack the body well. And I was having my doubts about Yontop because this dude came in and he fought Fernand. What was it, Padilla? Taco Chris Padilla. And the way he looked, my memory was like, yeah, this guy sucks. But I go back and I have to rewatch the fight, see the fight in the Contender Series, and the guy is not bad. I remembered his style a lot more sloppy than what it actually was. Pretty decent overall fighter, man. Like I think he missed weight in that fight against Padilla, but I'll have to cut him some slack because I think the 205, the plus money on him is a bit of a stretch. I think given the fact that he does hit hard, he attacks the body well, he has a good chin. He's very experienced too. He's what 14-3. I like his style. I really do. I had to really go back and in that losing effort against Padilla, he did a lot of good stuff. I think he just got shocked and surprised. Like he didn't take that fight ultimately seriously. He was getting back up after getting taken down, and then he just gave up his back and he made that mistake. And he's not really going to have that kind of issue here with Vyacheslav unless Vyacheslav wants to change his style up completely. I just don't see that happening. I'm leaning Jan Top. Despite my better judgment, it's telling me, hey, Vyacheslav, he's better. He's just going to skirt around. He's got good kicks. But what ultimately is leading me to Jan Top to get maybe a TKO in the second or third round is just his toughness. He is what I'm expecting Tai Tuivasa to have done. Maybe get hit a bit, but make it dirty and grimy because he's a bigger dude. He's 6 foot tall. He's much younger, less damage on him. And the way that Vyacheslav's been getting dropped lately is just not a good sign for me. If he had a better chin, for sure, because I know he's such a good striker, and I know he's got good, takedown defense. Jan Top's not really the best grappler, but he can get on top and start landing some bombs. But I do think the impact of his strikes are going to be the deciding factor here, where maybe he does get hit with a nice combination, but he counters and maybe he lands a hard enough jab that's going to maybe bust up Vyacheslav. Because I think the power difference, maybe it's not ultimately that much different, but just the impact of the shots are going to be a lot harder. Like as if they exchange jabs, Jan Top will, just be heavier with it. And I can see Vyacheslav getting more busted up. Just recently, just getting beat up so much on the ground. I can just see that accumulation of damage where, Nate Diaz style, you hit him once and then the scar tissue comes back. So I'll have to go with Jan Top to win this one by a TKO. I think second or third round. As long as Vyacheslav doesn't surprise us here going for takedowns and trying to maybe submit Yontop, I think Yontop has got more than a fighting chance. I think he's got that kind of let's fucking go kind of thing. So I'll go with Peru here, the 25-year-old, to beat Vyacheslav. I've been waiting for Vyacheslav to finally show his true potential, but at a certain point, I'm like, when is it going to come? And I don't think it's coming. I don't think Santa Claus, Slava Claus, is coming to town on this one. So I'll go with Goku to spirit bomb this boy. Moving on. Oh, dear God. Okay, we got Dennis Buzukja versus Danny Silva. Take your pick. When is Danny Silva going to knock this kid out? I don't want to overhype Danny. There's some issues with Danny, but ultimately he hits too damn hard. He's too good on the feet. He's contended with legit guys. He came in on short notice and he beat, quote unquote, Josh Kulabau. I don't think I personally thought he lost it. But, given the circumstances of him cutting weight, making this a short notice bout, and looking that good early against him, kind of cutting off the cage against that competent of a striker and hurting him, Dennis Buzukja cannot hang with guys like Josh Kulabau. This dude is just so mid-level Sarah Longo, where he went, I don't want to say life and death with Connor Matthews, but it was a competitive back and forth bout. Dennis was, clearly ahead to the untrained eye, maybe not, but he was ahead. He ultimately got the knockout, but I just never been impressed by Dennis. To me, he's just a guy that's floating in the UFC for the time being. Let's put him on the New York cards when we need him. Danny Silva's here to eviscerate this kid. So I've got Danny Silva. I'm probably going to parlay the shit out of him, and that could bite me in the ass. But I just think Danny's too good. Like, he's shown fast hands. He's shown power. He's shown the ability to to grapple. And, he's got a good coach mentor in Cub Swanson who's been there. I just do not see the physicality of Danny not translating against a middling guy like Dennis Buzukja. And I hate dissing Dennis, but they're clearly setting up Danny here to get a highlight reel knockout. So I'll go with Danny, maybe first or second round. Anything can happen in the cage. Danny throws a kick, he breaks his leg, and he loses. But I just don't see him not persevering. Even when he was tired against Josh, he still found a way. And I can appreciate that. For Dennis, he's getting knocked. Dude, here's the shit. He's getting knocked out by dudes who normally don't get knockouts. And Jamal Emmers, that's, I think, his only UFC finish. And he's getting out grappled by dudes who don't normally grapple. In that alien guy, what was his name? Sean Woodson out grappled him easily. And yeah, I can see Danny doing whatever he wants in this case. So moving on, we've got Edmund Shahbazyan versus Gerald Meerschaert. So automatically, there's no logic in this fight because it doesn't go the distance is probably the prop. We've got a chinny guy in Meerschaert who can choke you out, and we've got a kind of a quitter in Edmund that can get choked out and get finished. Minus 300 for Edmund is just absolutely ridiculous, but this isn't really a dog or pass for me. It could be, but it's not ultimately. It's just it doesn't go the distance, or maybe Edmund inside the distance. He's still very young. And he's showing a bit of development, but not enough for me to feel confident in that old form. I think when he had that undefeated streak and he had that confidence, he fought in such a manner that was just undeniable, that had he fought Gerald Meerschaert at that point, he would have ran through Gerald easily. He should have been maybe minus 1,000. But here, Gerald Meerschaert, as time goes on, he gets wiser, he gets older, and he's always shown to have an odd chin where if you hit him with your hardest shot and you don't knock him out, he just seems to recover well enough, and then as you're exhausted beating his ass, he'll take you down and strangle you. It has to be a very measured fight for Shahbazyan because it is a very simple fight for him to get back on form here. But Gerald is always that guy. He's got the most submissions in middleweight history. He's a tough dude to not necessarily prepare for because he's uber slow. He only really has a nasty left body kick that he has. He's got his wrestling. And he's got those chokes. He's got ridiculous chokes. Just don't be caught by anything. He does have power. I think just Edmund is still very young, and he's still the more durable of the two. And him recovering well enough and even taking down a dude that I thought was going to whip his ass in A.J. Dobson, props to him. He is putting in the work at Extreme Couture. But yeah, to me, I have to pick Edmund because it has to be Edmund. We can't keep having these older guys just run through the younger generation. I'd like to see Edmund get back on track, but realistically, it doesn't go the distance, maybe under. If it doesn't do the under and it goes to like a decision, I pray it doesn't. I really hope I don't jinx it. I go Edmund by first round knockout. We know Gerald is incredibly dangerous, but it's only dangerous if you allow him to be dangerous. If you bully him, if Edmund goes in there like, I'm going to run through this guy, I just need to find my shots, I need to be patient, he's going to find the knockout. He just lets him back up and dinks him. Just don't do anything stupid. Let's see the progression. I'm picking Edmund as maybe goodwill for him. Like, may my pick bless you in this fight so you win it. Next bout, Michael Morales versus Neil Magny. To me, these odds are ridiculous, minus 650. Come back on Neil plus 450. We've seen Neil get these come from behind finishes and schooling these younger guys. This is not going to happen with Michael. Michael's way too physical. He's too good of a wrestler, too good of a grappler. He has massive power. It's really the only way I can see Michael losing is if and I can see Michael losing, don't get me wrong, because Neil Magny is the king of the stall, wall and stall, just keeping you on the cage, kind of breaking you down. He throws a lot of volume. And it's just up to Michael to land the harder shots. He is going to be just as long as Neil. He's just going to hit a lot harder. Attack the legs. He's just a thick boy. I think they're going to look relatively the same, but during the fight, you're going to see Michael balloon up. You're going to see the size of his legs. And I want to see Michael fight smart. He kind of fights for fun almost. Like, he goes out there, he has fun. Doesn't really do anything to cement the rounds, but he does enough to win the fight. Here, I want to see him try to go for the finish against Neil. Neil's been knocked out. You kick the shit out of the dude's legs. he becomes really ineffective, and then it really becomes a fight for Neil to try to clinch you up. But Michael's background in wrestling is going to be really hard for him to do so. So it would really need to be an epic stunt of the ages for Michael to lose this fight. But because the odds are not great, minus 300 would have been it for me. Minus 650 can't touch it. So you could go possibly Michael Morales by a decision, or Michael Morales round number 3 or decision. Michael sometimes takes a bit of time to get started. I think round number 2 is when he start picking it up a bit more, which could lead to the finish in the third. But yeah, this needs to be a breakout performance for Michael, because this would put him in that. If you can beat the test of Neil Magny, you're in talks, right? You'll be number 13, number 12 in the world, and then, man, you're in the top 15 at this point. He's just right outside at number 21. So I'll go with Michael by decision, kind of like the safe play, because Michael hasn't really been finishing a whole ton of dudes. Neil's still shown some toughness, but it's going to have to be Michael's fight here to really prove and cement himself as the guy. Do what another prospect in Captain Canada over here couldn't do in Mike Malott. Mike looked good, but Mike did some bad shit there at the very end. I mean, had he not gone for a takedown, he would have won that fight, but it is what it is. Moving on, we've got the Ultimate Fighter middleweight final. We've got Ryan Loder, 6-1, come back on Robert Valentin. He is 10-3, so the experience edge and also the youth edge, because Valentin is 29, come back on Loder's 33. There's a lot going for Valentin. There's no odds yet, and I'm very intrigued on what the odds are going to be. Actually, they haven't announced the, I think, featherweight bout or bantamweight, one of the two. I guess it's going to be announced tomorrow, being Tuesday, as to who's the finale of the two dudes for the lower weight class. But back to this one, Robert Valentin. He is giving me vibes of Uriah Hall. Oh, let me fix this because you can't see it. There we go. Uriah Hall vibes in The Ultimate Fighter. Like, oh, he's the next big thing. He had a nasty knockout against some Greek dude, Giannis, and then he beat Patty. Not the Patty, but like Patty something or other. I can't remember his name. This entire Ultimate Fighter's been a bit lackluster. Some of the fights have been kind of whack. Have you been watching? I really don't know if people are interested, truly, because there was a scene where the ladies had to play basketball against each other, just shooting hoops from like a certain distance, and they couldn't fucking score for shit, pissing me off. But yeah, anyways, not Loder, but Valentin, he's fought some decent competition, not necessarily always beaten them. Like, he beat a current UFC fighter in Ibo Aslan. He fought him. Did I say beat him? He didn't beat him. He fought him, ended up losing via third round TKO. And what pissed me off, I tried to go back and watch it because I've seen that fight, and now it's behind like a weird paywall, so I have to get a VPN to watch it, which is like, man, that fucking sucks. But the guy is shown to have very good jiu-jitsu, very good judo, good striking, good Muay Thai, good elbows, good everything. It's just the issue with the guy is that he gives me too good to be true vibes. He gets rocked quite a bit. He's been taken down. Even in his last fight prior to the UFC, one of his last few fights, he got taken down by a dude that should not have been taking him down. He was getting beat and he's getting wobbled. He got wobbled in his last fight in the Tough House. It's just that the dude, Patty, was just too reckless, and he got caught, got taken down, and he got put in like that arm bar with your legs. I don't know what you would fucking call it. There's a technical judo name for it, like a Japanese name for it. It's just, I see him having a ton of holes, and there's a ton of holes and a ton of hype. For Ryan Loder, he's very unassuming. The guy is 6-1. The only loss on his record is to a pretty decent fighter, went to a split decision. And I was looking to ultimately fade him. I didn't think he was going to make it that far based off of, his overall fights. He's a wrestler, dominant wrestler, Division 1. His last fight in the Tough House against whatever Greek dude it was. This guy, I can't remember his name, but this dude is pretty well-rounded, good striker, very good submission guy. And the way he handled him was surprising to me. And that kind of made me take notice. I had to go watch some of his fights. His wrestling's top-notch, no doubt. He's very, very, very aggressive on the ground. He doesn't need to be sometimes. If he doesn't have a position, he won't necessarily put himself out of position to go for it, but he likes his ground and pound. His striking's not too bad. It's very basic, but very effective. You are so tentative to do anything because you're expecting him to try to shoot on you because you are going to get taken down. Then he starts catching you with right hands and just overall very clean. So I am looking at Ryan Loder here to actually get the what I'm assuming to be the upset against Robert Valentin because you look at community here, Valentin should knock this guy out, and I don't think that's the case. I think with Valentin, he's been fighting a certain level of competition that really hasn't been putting him through the ringer, and some of the lower level guys that he's been fighting have been giving him fits to a point that I'm thinking this guy is just not what we're expecting overall. I think that they want him to win. I think he can definitely win. He's very skilled on paper. He's got a jiu-jitsu black belt, judo black belt as well, and he looks like the complete package. It's just I think he's a bit chinny. I think you can hurt him. I think Ryan Loder could hurt him and get on top and finish him. On top of that, I think Ryan Loder can grind him out. I think Ryan can exhaust him. I think if he put a high enough pace on him, he does slow down. And I just think that despite his record, it's not a bad record, 10-3, a ton of experience compared to this, older wrestler. I think Ryan's gonna really surprise a lot of people. I think if you really come out here and put a pace on Robert and just engage, don't let him catch you with knees when you're going for these takedowns. I think you can grind him out and possibly get a finish. So to me, I would like to take a shot on what I perceive to be the dog in Ryan Loder. So I don't see it for Robert. I think he can have a ton of fights in the UFC that could be fun, but when he gets to a certain level, man, I can see a guy like Bruno Ferreira knocking him out viciously. Because once you hit a certain level, shit, I can even see a Phil Haas coming out here and running through Valentin. And for me, that's not something I want to have in my head. You would assume he would come out here and knock these dudes out based off of like his impressive run, but you see some of his tape and there's just a lot of red flags. And I see the tape on Ryan. He doesn't do anything he doesn't need to do. And he fought let's see, who did he fight? He fought a pretty good prospect that's coming up. And what was his name? Funny enough, he beat Shahbazyan's brother, Leon Shahbazyan. He beat his ass. Where is it? Luan Davis. Luan Davis is a pretty good prospect. That was his last fight, and the way he handled him, he was able to get him down. He even hurt Davis, and I think Loder even does have some nice power in his punches that is just unassuming as well. I'm really liking Loder. There's a risk here because of the experience difference, and I think that Valentin, even when he's hurt, he can find ways to finish you. He does have good submissions, but ultimately, if Ryan is smart, training at a Team Alpha Male, he should be able to find a path to victory very easily. Get Robert down, beat him up a bit, and just rinse and repeat, tire him out, and I think you can finish him in the third. So I'm going to be bold and actually say that round number 3 TKO, but I can actually see more realistically. Screw it. I'll say if you're going to prop this motherfucker up, you go round number 3 or decision for Ryan Loder. Or just take a money line depending on what the line is because I don't have it yet. Moving on, we've got co-main event, ridiculous here. Angie Hill versus Tabitha Ricci. What is the time right now? Been 51 minutes. That's a long time. All right, Angela Hill, pick a -115, -105. I'm not a fan of Ricci. I think she's overhyped. I think she's completely overhyped, but she's fighting a 40-year-old woman in a co-main event. Funny enough, both the co and the main event have 40-some-year-olds, near 40 people. In a couple months, Angie will be 40. Tabitha, why on God's green earth is it listed as a pick'em? Well, it's because I think Tabitha sucks. I think she is she reacts poorly sometimes to getting hit. If she can't get you to the ground, she really doesn't have all too much other than just kind of winging punches. She has some power, but her last fight, I thought she lost it. I thought she had to weasel her way to that victory against Tecia Torres. Tecia was lighting her up on the feet. Tecia was stuffing the takedowns. And what we know about Angela Hill is that despite her age, she has never stopped getting better, and she's actually been getting a lot better despite the age. Her last fight was against Luana Pinheiro, another judo girl. Ricci, a judo girl, black belt as well. and she was able to handle her. She was able to get on top. Angela Hill's takedown defense has gotten better. She uses her knees nastily in the clinch, throws elbows. She has a high pace. The only way I can see Ricci winning this fight is by just being a slimy little decision weasel. I don't see how Angela can lose if she is fighting at her optimum self. You know, Angela's Angela. Angie's Angie. And she's getting better. But I think ultimately the pace that she's going to put on is what's going to get her this victory. Now, I've seen Angela Hill look incredible before, and then her next fight, her takedown defense goes to absolute shit. But if Pennington can stop the takedowns, and that's Tisha Pennington, Torres can stuff takedowns for Tabitha, I think Angela can do so and actually land damage with the knees in the clinch. Just avoid the judo. And I think they're both pretty strong, right? Tabitha's a tough little cookie. But I think Angela Hill's one of the more, strong girls in the 115 division. It's a tough one. It could be slimy, but I would love to get some dog odds on Angela Hill. But with Tabitha Ricci, I think she's a bit of a hype job. I think that if she's not the better everything, she's going to look pretty pedestrian. And she should be on a 2-fight losing streak right now, opposed to the 2-fight winning streak for Angela Hill. I'm not going to shit on her striking. It has developed where she can maybe hurt Angie. I just don't really see it. I think it could be another slimy little decision held up against the cage, but the biggest difference here is Angela's knees. I'll go with Angie by a decision here. It's just ultimately the higher pace of Angie's going to win. And I think if you attack the body of Ricci, which Angela does well, just keeps to the body, avoid getting taken down, high output, up against the cage, knees and elbows, you should be able to cruise, baby. So I'll go with Angela Hill on this one. And then finally, main event of the evening, we've got Jared Cannonier versus Caio Borralho. We've got plus 170 on Cannonier, come back on Caio, minus 205. Now, I thought about this a bit, and I'm thinking this could be the easiest method for Cannonier to kind of expose Caio Borralho if you don't necessarily believe in the hype. And then I'm thinking this is truly the easiest path to victory for Caio to enter what I initially thought was the top 5. I thought Cannonier was number 5, but I guess that's changed. But this would just skyrocket Borralho into ultimately the top 5. The problem I see with this fight is that Cannonier is the more proven guy. He's fought the tougher competition. Caio's just been, doing his thing. His last fight was against a chinny guy that was at 205 that drops down to 185 in Paul Craig. And Caio gets his first, official knockout in the UFC. And what I like about Caio, and I've always said, is that I love his fight IQ. He's a smart guy, clearly fighting nerds, the whole gimmick and such. Just when I see him fight, there's a lot of openings there for him. Like if you look at his last fight, chin in the air, kind of bum rushing. But I think he fights with specific game plans for specific fighters. Jared Cannonier, how do you fight him? Well, in all honesty, Jared's 40 years old. He's taken some punishment. He's been getting hit and wobbled by dudes that normally don't hit and wobble you. For example, we've got that gremlin. What the hell? Why am I blanking out on his name? Marvin Vittori's hurting you. We've got Imavov. Imavov's a sniper, but typically he's not like a one-punch kind of guy. He's hurting you, wobbling you pretty bad. And Jared, he's gotten way better with age as well, similar to Angela Hill. Dude's massive. He hits hard. The problem that I saw in his last fight, and this could just be me reaching, but he gassed himself out. He slowed significantly down. He was very ineffective against Imavov by initiating the clinch. And Caio Borralho, this is his first 5-round main event. There's a clear path for him to win this, and he just has to take the game plans of Imavov and Robert Whittaker, being on the outside, using your kicks. Caio's crafty. Caio's a very good grappler. I don't necessarily want to say that Caio is like a sure thing or a lock, but it's going to take some really bad decision-making from Caio to not win this fight via decision or maybe find a way to get it. He can win it by a variety of different ways. Easiest path is to maybe not really engage much with Jared, because with Kaio's style, with his blitzing kind of Machida like karate style and his kickboxing, the dude is so well rounded that he doesn't need to particularly go out for a knockout. I don't necessarily think he's got massive knockout power, but he does blitz in very well, and he's very fast that he can catch Jared and knock him out. I can also see him catching a kick from Jared, getting on top. I can see him eventually getting a good position on Jared, taking the back and getting him to the ground. Jared's takedown defense has gotten a lot better. It's just the craftiness of Caio. The only thing I worry the most about Caio is if he's leaping in, or if he maybe gets his legs kicked, because he does kind of rely on that lead leg a bit, and he's kind of out there with that karate stance, that maybe Jared could kick the shit out of that leg. But I'm positive that Caio's thinking about that. Caio doesn't always come up with the same plan for everybody. He is fine just eking away, making a boring fight. This is why I'm not too excited about it, because I think Caio can make this a very boring fight where he's clearly up ahead, just point fighting against Jared, and Jared's going to be kind of forced to lead the dance, try to lead it, where at that point Caio can counter. That's similar to what Robert Whitaker did. Like, if you see it, Cannonier was needing to close that distance because of not only the respect that he had for Robert, just the distance that Robert likes to keep with his kicks. And Caio, here's what I'm kind of leaning towards, is that Caio's got a really crafty high left high kick. And I think he can maybe even catch Cannonier with that height difference. If he's not expecting it, if say Caio's going for takedowns and he's leaping in and out and he's on the outside, I think he can cut the distance and maybe try to land that head kick. Because if anything, I can see Cannonier getting wobbled by a lot of stuff. But it's a very tough fight for both men. And I can see why the plus 170 is enticing for Cannonier. But a guy that is specifically game plan oriented, and you see what he can do to guys in gals specifically, like Bruno Brazil, where he's fixing these fighters. God, you see guys like Hoofy and Lord Gian Silva. God, for sake, fucking Prates, first man to ever knock out Jingliang. Let's not talk about Kreshki. He doesn't count. He didn't wear the glasses, so it doesn't count. But you see a guy like Borralho, and I really do respect his fight IQ. I think he's going to find a way. He can win this any real way, but boldly, I will take him to win this by a knockout. Maybe like in the third or fourth round. I think he will eventually find a place for that head kick, which is going to hurt Jared Cannonier. But yeah, it's a fun fight. I don't think it's going to be uber fun to watch. I think it's going to be a very slow pace. I think Cannonier is going to be trying to rush him down and trying to do things to him. It would not be an unwise thing to try to get some top control on Caio and maybe land some ground and pound. We've seen Caio kind of been content off of his back, trying to work his jiu-jitsu, and beast like Cannonier laying on top of him. It could be a very surprising thing because maybe Caio's not expecting that. And, Caio, great black belt. He trains with Damian Maia. Respects the shit out of him. The dude just says shit and he does stuff that makes me believe in the guy. So I'm going to take him to win. I probably won't bet him. There's a bet that I'm thinking of, which is like a parlay with Danny Silva. And I really want to see what the line is on Kong Wang inside the distance. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens, man. This card here, maybe even Zach Reese. I do like Zach Reese to get a finish. Yontop, actually. I might bet Yontop. But we'll see how my baseball bets do. Baseball is hit or miss. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Johnny TigerBomb MMA. I will see you next week, hopefully with a much better card. I'm praying that this card delivers for real. It's these unassuming ones where, like, I'd love it if every fight was a banger, specifically like the women's bouts, because, I want to see Josiane Nunes and Jacqueline Cavalcanti go at it and beat the shit out of each other. That'd be awesome. But yeah, Johnny TigerBomb. See you next week.